Now, the World Bank has warned that rising trade tensions pose the biggest threat to the world economy this year. It's forecasting global growth of 2.7%, but says that plans by President-elect Trump to hit imported goods with tariffs could put a dent in that figure. The BBC's Jonathan Josephs has been talking to the bank's deputy chief economist, Ayhan Kose.
The prospect of new US tariffs on its biggest trading partners could reshape the global economy this year, as central banks continue to grapple with interest rates and stubborn inflation. Strong economic growth would help. So I put it to the World Bank that its forecast was for the joint weakest growth since the 2008 financial crisis.
When we think about economic growth, it's stable. 2.7%, you can live with that. But the issue is that it is not sufficient enough to basically make progress when it comes to the type of needs people need in advanced economies, in emerging, developing economies, low-income countries. We need higher growth. And when you look at over a longer time period, we think growth numbers will gonna come down. That worries us.
Does that mean that living standards are going to continue to be squeezed all over the world?
I think with the big challenge we see, living standards can continue basically improving, but not at the pace we saw in the past. We are concerned about developing economies, low-income countries. We are not seeing enough growth in these economies to basically close the income gap with advanced economies. In fact, in a number of cases, we see these countries are becoming poorer relative to, advanced economies and per capita basis. And that's worrying because these are the countries that are going to bring these masses of young people to the global labor force.
What are your three biggest fears for the global economy and growth in 2025?
I think the three biggest fears, number one, is this, the possibility of escalating trade tensions between major economies. Number two, the policy uncertainty going up and the consequences of that for investment. And number three, of course, we are really worried about possibility of financial stress if interest rates remain elevated. That challenges become even larger for emerging developing economies.
When it comes to those potential US tariffs, there are various scenarios laid out in your report saying that they will have a negative impact on global economic growth. Does that not tell us that they are the biggest threat to global economic growth?
Anytime you introduce restrictions on trade, there will be adverse consequences. And those consequences are most often borne by the country that introduced those consequences. But the big issue is that for us to be able to basically provide a quantitative assessment of these tariffs, we need to know how much tariffs are going to increase, and we need to know what other policies are going to be there. I think, Jonathan, there is this, the possibility of other countries reacting to these tariffs. In fact, when they react, the cost to the global economy is even larger.
New restrictions are making the global economy ever more fragmented, so the choices politicians make are set to have a huge impact in the year ahead. Jonathan Josephs, BBC News.
And just before we go,